nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
The last passage I'd like to discuss on this series of the biblical presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary is, ironically, not an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary outright, but it is very strongly associated with Mary, especially as a reading for two of her feasts during the year. And that is the passage from the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation, popularly referred to as the Woman and the Dragon. In this passage, the author of Revelation, John the Seer, never refers to her as Mary, or even the mother of Jesus, because this image so transcends the young girl from Nazareth named Mary and the mother of Jesus, who was present at the wedding at Cana and the foot of the cross, that she personifies a very important element of God's plan of salvation history, that she is referred to as simply the woman. Now, this is a woman who is clothed with the sun, with a crown of 12 stars, and the moon at her feet, representing a cosmic order that surrounds her. She is wailing in pain as she is giving birth to a child, and she is pursued by a dragon, a red dragon with 7 heads and 7 horns, whose tail sweeps a third of the stars from the sky. So the dragon represents in many ways cosmic upheaval and disorder, sweeping a third of the stars from the sky. The woman gives birth to a son who is immediately swept up into heaven. Because he can no longer get to the son, the dragon pursues the mother, who is taken down to earth and hidden in the desert. In the midst of a war in heaven in which Michael, the archangel, and his army of angels cast the dragon down, the dragon pursues the woman to the desert, where a flood of water comes out of his mouth, but the earth protects the woman by swallowing the flood. And in aggravation, the dragon then goes to earth, where, giving up the pursuit of the woman, he makes war on her other offspring. It's a very dynamic image, which is also associated with the Blessed Virgin Mary, but is also expressive of other elements of God's plan of salvation history. To begin with, it's very similar to an ancient mythology of the goddess Leto, who is the mother of twins, Apollo, the god of the light, and Artemis, the goddess of the moon and the great hunter. The story goes that Pythos, the great serpent, the great python, who is the influence of the Delphic oracle, received a prophecy that one of Leto's children would replace him as the principle behind the Delphic oracle. So he seeks to devour the children of Leto when she gives birth. Leto is protected by the gods, placed on an island that the sea covers to protect her from Pythos. She gives birth to the twins, but it is Apollo who eventually overthrows Python and replaces him as the principal influence behind the oracle at Delphi. A very similar mythological story to the image of the woman and the dragon. But be that as it may, the image in the book of Revelation represents numerous elements of God's plan of salvation, which we eventually incorporate into our liturgical celebration, associating this image with Mary. Well, first, there's the Genesis image, in which the woman can be seen very much as the new Eve. Eve had been tempted by the serpent in the Garden of Eden, but now the new Eve is giving birth to a child. Her offspring that would eventually overthrow the serpent is now being pursued by the serpent, not wanting to be overthrown by the offspring of the new Eve. There are also interpretations with regard to salvation history, in which the woman can be seen as the heavenly Israel giving birth to the Messiah, who is pursued by Satan, who seeks to destroy the Messiah, in many ways as Herod sought to destroy Jesus, which led to the slaughter of the innocents. The woman could also be seen as personifying old Israel of the Old Covenant, giving birth to new Israel, which is the church under the new covenant of Christ's blood. And Satan, through the Roman Empire, seeking to destroy this new Israel, the church, in its infancy. But nonetheless, God protects all those involved with his plan of salvation. Finally, there is what I call the ecclesiological interpretation with regard to the church and its presence and its actions, in which the woman could be seen as personifying the church, giving birth to Christians who the devil, personified in the dragon, seeks to devour and destroy through the early persecutions against the church. All these are possible interpretations of the woman and the dragon, which we can only know for sure if we get inside the mind of the author himself. But if you notice, in light of the other presentations of the Blessed Virgin Mary, all of these coincide with the growing meaning behind the image and example of the Virgin Mary as personifying Israel, personifying the church, representative of all of God's holy people who seek to do God's will. That even if the woman in the book of Revelation is not necessarily the Blessed Virgin Mary outright, we see that she and the Blessed Virgin Mary as presented in the Gospels represent much of the same thing. And as a result, in addition to a Genesis interpretation, salvation history interpretations, ecclesiology or church interpretations, we have with all of these our liturgical interpretation, in which this is one of the readings as the church celebrates the liturgical feast days of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And so we see in this image of the woman and the dragon, which still can be associated with the Blessed Virgin Mary even if she's not named outright, and even if the author of Revelation meant her to represent something different than Mary itself. The representation of the woman and what Mary represents are so intertwined that our liturgical tradition and our devotional tradition have associated these two images over time and over our church's history. And in this image, we see how our devotion and our recognition of the role of the Blessed Virgin Mary, what she has come to symbolize for us and the church, personifying all followers of Christ and being a symbol of the church itself, we see how, in the Scriptures, the progression of the Virgin Mary and the ascending images and representations she has come to symbolize has brought her so far from the young girl of Nazareth receiving a message from an angel to the image of the mother making petition for God's holy people and representing the entire church standing at the foot of the cross, to that woman clothed with the sun who has come to be a very image, symbolizing important elements in the very salvation history of our Almighty God.